So I just watched Hatchet for the very first time in my life, and I'm looking forward to talking about it. So, let's get spooky. Greetings everyone, my name is Nightshade, this is The Night Shift, a home for all things spooky, and today we're looking at Hatchet, released in 2006. Now this is one of those films that I had never seen before, like I've always known about it but never actually checked it out. But as of last Thursday, I have checked it out, and I'm looking forward to talking about it. And you might be thinking to yourself, Nightshade, how have you not seen this movie? Well, to put it simply, this was never available to rent in any of the locations that I lived at. It's been on my radar for a very long time, and I never checked it out. There wasn't available to rent from the video store, and by the time it came to streaming, I didn't really have that much of an interest to check it out, to be honest. After having several friends tell me, oh yeah, it's Kane Hodder as a homicidal backwoods redneck, I was like, oh, so Kane Hodder's playing Jason again. And I was like, cool, maybe I'll check it out one day. Well, ladies and gentlemen, one day has finally come, and I regret putting this movie off for so long because I had a blast with this film. I put it on, and within like the first 5 minutes, we get Robert Englund and the other dude from the Blair Witch Project, the one that gets his ooey gooey bits torn out and left at the camp. And it pulled me in, and I checked it out. I had a blast, and I was more than excited to go and check out the sequel, which we will be talking about on Friday. But as of right now, we're going to be talking about the first film. But let's go ahead and get into the review. Now, if you're new to the channel, let me break it down real quick. That was dumb. I regret nothing. So what I'm going to do for this review is I'm going to break it down into two categories, the positives and the negatives. Let you know what I liked about this film and what I didn't like about this film. Then when we're done with that, I'm going to talk about my favorite scene in this film and let you know exactly why it was my favorite scene in this film. And then when we finish with that, we are going to score this out of a possible 10 points and end the video. But here on The Night Shift, we always start things off on the bright side with... A group of strangers go on a late-night haunted boat tour in the swamps of Louisiana. The boat they're on hits a rock and starts to sink to the bottom, and the people must go to shore and make their way all the way back to town while Victor Crowley, the local ghost, picks them off one by one. And obviously that's just the bare bones of the story. I mean, you can watch the film for yourself. It's free on Tubi. This is a story that I actually really enjoy. It's very simple but very effective. It's not overly complex. It doesn't have to be. It's a campy slasher film from the early 2000s. But the story is just good enough that I needed to mention it here on the positives list. So, moving right along into my next positive, we have... The cast of this film is filled with horror legends and horror icons. It's just... ridiculous. We get Robert Englund right there at the very beginning, as well as Joshua Leonard, who was the guy from Blair Witch Project. We got Dion Richard, who you might know from Scream 3. We get a cameo appearance from Tony Todd, which is always a fucking plus. Tony Todd was the fucking man. R.I.P. Goddamn. We get John Carl Buechler, who made the coolest Jason of all time from Part 7. He also created the Halloween 6 mask, which a lot of people have said is one of their favorites, second to the original mask. It was also cool to see Kane Hodder doing what Kane Hodder does best as Victor Crowley. He also gets a normal person role as Victor Crowley's dad, which I think was a nice touch. And I'm sure there are more references to other horror movies that I might not have caught the first 2 times watching this, but it's sick. This is a huge love letter to horror. I thought the casting was great. We've seen all of these people do wonderful things on screen, and yeah, it was just like a who's who of horror in one film, and for that, had to go on the positives list. Absolutely. All right, so moving up next on my positives list, we have... For a cheap, low-budget film like this is surprisingly atmospheric as hell. Especially in the opening of this film, what the fuck? You get a lot of really good lighting and really good vibes. Not so much in the daylight stuff. It's not nearly as atmospheric, but still has a vibe to it. So, it had to be mentioned here on the positives list because, for a cheap film like this, it's absolutely bathed in atmosphere. And, another thing that helps this become so atmospheric is our next positive, which is... I hate to say it again, but like, holy shit, for a cheap film like this, the cinematography is absolutely on point. Like, the cinematography in this, like, somebody really put forth a valiant effort in capturing what they were capturing. Whoever was in charge of the camera worked their ass off to make this one of the most cinematic cheap fucking slasher films I've ever seen. Like, especially in some of the lore dump parts, like where they're talking about Victor Crowley's backstory. That's like fucking top-notch filming. Like, it's top-notch cinematography, and like, I was not expecting that, you know. I wasn't expecting much from this film, but you know, the cinematography in this is like high-end. Like, the person behind the camera definitely knew what the fuck they were doing. It really goes to show you that even if you're making a low-budget film, if you know what you're doing with the camera, you can make this cinematic as fuck. Like, it's all within the skill of the camera holder, not so much the camera itself. So yeah, that definitely had to go on the positives list, because that is one that took me by absolute surprise. Let's go ahead and keep this thing thinging by going on to our next positive, which is... So Victor Crowley is actually one of the main reasons that I never checked out this film. I said this has been on my radar for a long time, and I've seen pictures of Victor Crowley, and I was like, ugh. He looks weird, and it doesn't really do much for me. I'm more of a fan of masked slashers, I'll be honest with you. So seeing that this was a deformed guy without a mask, so pretty much Jason in part 2 without a mask, is honestly a little off-putting and not something that I was too excited about. Boy, do I regret that decision, because Victor Crowley is fucking awesome. Seeing Kane Hodder be able to run and haul ass and kill everything within his sight is fucking phenomenal. All of his iterations of Jason just walk menacingly. This, we actually get to see him haul ass and pull like a Derek Mears version of Jason. And let me tell you, I'm fucking here for it. And whenever I saw pictures of Victor Crowley, you know, like I said, it was not something I was into, but you know, seeing him in this movie with the lighting that they chose, it looks a lot creepier than just, you know, a couple behind the scenes photos of Victor Crowley. Like, it actually works with the lighting here. I really like the way the makeup looks whenever he's like skewered and you know, stabs himself by running into the post. As a matter of fact, I probably used that look for this thumbnail. I don't know yet, I haven't made it, but I probably will, because that's one of the coolest looking makeups in that lighting. That it looks fucking sick. So yeah, I slept on Victor Crowley for a fucking stupid reason, admittedly. And I wish I hadn't. I wish I'd checked this movie out before that, because shit, dude, he's fucking cool as hell. And that's why Victor Crowley made it here on the positives list. And speaking of Victor Crowley, let's go ahead and move on to the next and final positive, which is... God, help me! The kills in this film are brutal as all motherfuck. Now, everything's done with practical effects, and it's just, mwah. Practical effects are better than any fucking CGI, and I will die on that hill. You know, I'm a huge proponent for practical kills and practical effects, and everything in this film, kill-wise, was done with practical effects, and you know, some of the kills were oddly cinematic as well, and they absolutely do not shy away from the red stuff, which I love. If you're gonna be a slasher film, so the slashing. Don't shy away from it. Yeah, man, the fucking kills in this are brutal as shit. Well executed, no pun intended, or pun intended, fuck it. Absolutely brutal and just so good. So good. With everything that I love about this film, it's not perfect. So let's go ahead and move on to the not so bright side of things with... So I have a few negatives here that don't warrant their own like little chapter heading in the way that I do my reviews. So I'm just gonna go ahead and call this one miscellaneous things, like small little issues that I have with the film that, you know, aren't like a movie killer, but you know, they're worth noting. First up, this is a very low budget slasher film, and it's going to be a little bit corny. So there's corny dialogue and some corny acting from some of the lesser known actors in this film. Like I said, the dialogue and the jokes that they write for this film, also corny as hell. The scale of this film feels kind of small. It feels like this was done on a soundstage. Like there's a few shots where they're, you know, shooting front and center and only focused on the front and center. Like you don't see anything from the back shots, if you will. Not to mention, you know, the lighting is very controlled, which you can't really do whenever you're shooting outdoors. Shooting outdoors, you're stuck with whatever Mother Nature throws your way. And since the lighting is very evenly lit and doesn't really shift throughout the movie, I do believe that this was shot on a soundstage. And even if it wasn't, it just feels like a very small scale movie because it is. You know, once I noticed it, I couldn't unnotice it, so it did have to be mentioned. But with all of that being said, that's my only real gripes with this film. No, I understand that it's a low budget movie, and I don't judge those too harshly. People out here just doing their best making a movie, you know what I mean? So like, I can't fault them for it. I did have those minor little gripes, but overall, solid movie. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next segment, which is... ending is definitely my favorite scene of this film for a couple reasons. Like, our two survivors think they've defeated Victor Crowley, and you know, they float away on like a little boat. And as they do, you hear like a little audio cue, a little shift in the music that is very reminiscent of the music from the first Friday the 13th. And wouldn't you know it, as predicted, Victor Crowley does the boat jump scare, but there's more. Mary Beth falls off the boat and she's, you know, struggling in the water. And as she's floating up, she sees a hand in the water, probably assuming that it's Ben reaching out to help her into the boat. So she grabs the hand and it turns out it's Victor Crowley holding Ben's severed arm, which is fucking phenomenal. And then Victor Crowley picks up Mary Beth and is screaming in her face. She's screaming back, and then we just get a cut to black. No resolve, just nothing else, just nothing. And then it rolls to the credits. And these are like some of my favorite types of endings in horror films that just have that abrupt and then nothing else attached to it. Like, that's fucking sick. I love the way that this movie ended. It was almost the beginning that was my favorite scene because obviously Robert Englund is fucking the best. But you know, that ending, that ending was fucking top notch. So let's go ahead and score this film and then get out of here. What do you say? When it comes to Hatchet, I'm going to give this film a solid 8 out of 10. This thing was a lot of fun. Like, it does have a decent amount of flaws in it. There's no joking with that. But overall, it's a fucking blast. I had fun with it, and I regret not watching this sooner. So that's just about gonna do it for me. If you liked the video, let me know by leaving me a like. Comment down below what you want to see on the channel next. I will do my best to accommodate. I really will. And until next time, my name is Nightshade. This has been The Night Shift, and I will see you in the next video. Stay spooky, my friends.